And then we do call a Senate to order. Mr. Clerk, please call a roll.
Senator Barnett, Senator Barrett, Senator Blackman, Senator Blackwell, Senator Blunt, Senator Boyd, Senator Branning, Senator Bryan, Senator Butler of the 36th, Senator Butler of the 38th, Senator Carter, Senator Kaufman, Senator Chassenall, Senator Chisholm, Senator DeBar, Senator Delano, Senator England, Senator Fillingane, Senator Frazier, Senator Harkins, Senator Hickman, Senator Hill, Senator Hobson, Senator Horn, Senator Jackson, Senator Johnson, Senator Jordan, Senator Kirby, Senator McCon, Senator McDaniel, Senator McClendon, Senator McMahon, Senator Michelle, Senator Moran, Senator Norwood, Senator Parker, Senator Parks, Senator Polk, Senator Seymour, Senator Simmons of the 12th, Senator Simmons of the 13th, Senator Sojourner, Senator Sparks, Senator Suber, Senator Tate, Senator Thomas, Senator Thompson, Senator Turner Ford, Senator Whaley, Senator Wiggins, Senator Williams, Senator Younger. Mr. President, a quorum is present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Will senators and the guests in the gallery please rise for the invocation given by Father Patrick Sanders from St. Peter's by the Sea Episcopal Church in Gulfport, Mississippi. The invocation will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Senator Thompson. Father Sanders.
Morning. Let us pray. Gracious God, giver of life and love, we thank you above all things for those two things, for life and for love. We thank you for bringing us in safety to this new day. We ask that you give us a spirit of wisdom, justice, equity, little bit of humility. At the end of today, endow us with a sense of pride, not that simple, selfish pride, but that rich, full-bellied boasting we get to do at the end of the day when we look back on it and what we have done with the world you have given us is better because of us. May we look back on today. No, may we look back on the rest of our lives and see that all that we have done, we have collaborated with you. Give us joy, even in the most tedious of tasks, so that we find you and not the devil in the details. May we see that we have worked alongside you and not merely made laws, Lord, but miracles. All these things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Yeah, I gotta go see a family whose dad died. A friend of ours' dad died 2 nights ago. Yeah. They live on this side of the coast.
Good morning, Senator Jackson.
I see. Thank you, Father Sanders. Good to have you here from the coast. Now the reading of the journal. Senator Polk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate dispense with the reading of the journal.
Senator moves to dispense with the reading of the journal. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Message and petitions, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, there are none.
Committee reports. Senator Polk, you're recognized.
Mr. President, I move the Senate dispense with the reading of the committee reports.
Senator moves to dispense with the reading of the committee reports. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Next, the reading of the titles of the bills and resolutions. I recognize Senator Polk.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate dispense with the reading of the titles of the bills and resolutions.
Senator moves to dispense with the reading of the titles of the bills and resolutions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We'll move to introductions. Introductions, Senator. Introductions. Seeing none, we'll move to the calendar. I'm sorry, Senator McMahon. For
Yes,
what
I'd ask
purpose?
the Senate to focus on the non-smokers table today. We have a doctor on behalf of Michelle and myself. We'd like to welcome Patrick Whipple to his Mississippi State Senate. He is a doctor in Madison, Mississippi, but he is from Tupelo, Mississippi, and still has family there. Welcome to your state Senate.
Thank you, Doctor. Welcome. Okay, Senator Hobson passes. Items 1 and 2 retain their place on the calendar. Senator Harkins, you're recognized. We're on item 3, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to skip item 3, have it retain its place on the calendar. Go to item 4, Senate Bill number 2681, and have the title read.
Item 3 retains its place on the calendar. Item 4, Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 2681, Mississippi Development Authority extending, codifying, repealers on certain laws related to.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator.
My motion is we adopt the committee sub and be recognized to explain it.
You're recognized to explain the committee sub.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill is from our friends at MDA. It extends the repealers on a couple of programs. The first section is the repealer for the Advantage Jobs Program to 2027. It's a rebate program designed to encourage business to create at least 25 new quality jobs to locate in the state. Jobs must meet or exceed 110% of the average annual wage of the state or the county in which the company locates, whichever is lower. And the Advantage Jobs Incentive Program provides for a rebate of 90% of the Mississippi payroll taxes withheld to qualified employers for a period of up to 10 years. It basically is just extending the repealer to 2027 on that program. Section 3 extends the repealer and definitions of the MMEIA statute defining bonds, facility project. Those are just the terms that are guiding those major economic development projects. In Section 4, line 1479 to end extends the repealer on the GAP program, the Growth and Prosperity program at MDA. Line 1567 clarifies that the annualized unemployment rate in a GAP county falls below 150% of the state's annualized unemployment rate for 3 consecutive calendar years, and less than 30% of the population of the county is at or below the federal poverty level for 3 consecutive years, according to the most recent official data compiled by the Census Bureau. That was the amendment we made in committee to fix the language from the GAP counties that the Delta Council had asked for. And that is an explanation of the bill, just extending the repealers on all these programs. If there are no questions, I move adoption of the committee sub.
Questions on the bill? Seeing none, Senators move for adoption of the committee. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. On the bill, Senator.
There are no questions. Move passage on the morning roll call.
Questions on the bill? Seeing none, the Senators move for passage of the morning roll call. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator. We're on item 5.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go to item 5, Senate Bill number 2684, and have the title read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 2684, Children's Promise Act, revised definition of eligible charitable organization.
Make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator Harkins.
I'd like to recognize Senator McCon to explain the bill.
Senator McCon, you're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President. The very simple change of this bill, nothing's changed as far as the program. If you look on line 2627, all we did is clarify the definition of eligible charitable organization. and placed in the Department of Education for any programs that they've previously or can in the future certify. I'd entertain any questions.
Questions on the bill? Senator Turner Ford, for what purpose, ma'am?
Question.
You yield for a question, Senator
I will.
McConnell?
I will.
Senator Turner Ford is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did not understand what you said. Could you please just repeat it?
On lines 26 and 27 there, the definition of eligible charitable organization was cleared up to include that the Department of Education could be a certifier as well.
A certifier?
Certified, to be a certified eligible charitable organization, the definition within, to accreditate, let me clarify that, to accreditate that organization. So they've got to be accredited either by a regional accrediting authority or the Department of Education.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hill, for what purpose, ma'am?
Question.
You yield for a question, Senator McConnell?
I will.
Senator Hill is recognized for a question.
Thank you. Can you give me an example of some charitable organization that's accredited by the Mississippi Department of Education or that will be accredited by the Department of Education?
I believe Inova Prep is one of those that's out there. Inova Prep, Senator Harkins knows a little bit more about them. That's one that is currently accredited by the Department of Education and now would be eligible under that. I think Senator Williams actually had a complimenting concern as well. He can tell you about another one he's got.
Okay, I just wanted to check because I was not aware of any that were accredited by any charitable that was accredited by the department. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hill. If there's no other questions, I would move for final passage based on the morning roll call.
Seeing no further questions, use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Reporters voting no. Present. Seeing none, the bill passes. Thank you. Item 6, Senator Harkins, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to skip items 6 through items 13 and have them retain their place on the calendar. And go to item 14 and have the title read.
Items 6 through 13 retain a place on the calendar. Item 14, Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
98, ad valorem tax, extend fee in lieu qualifying period for renewable energy project.
Mr. President, I make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed,
Aye.
no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator Harkins.
I'd like to, my motion is to adopt the committee substitute and recognize Senator Fillingham to explain the bill.
Senator Fillingham is recognized for the committee substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President. So what Senate Bill 2698 does is simply extend the repealer on something that we approved last year on regarding establishing of solar projects in Mississippi. The legislation extends for an additional 3 years the amount of time major solar investments have to reach an agreement for the fee in lieu arrangements with the counties that they're located in. There have been 3 such projects I'm aware of. There could be more, but a $260 million investment in Washington County, $150 million investment in Tallahatchie County, $120 million investment in Perry and Forest counties. And to qualify, these projects have to, under 273146, invest at least $100 million or more. So this is definitely helping attract investment in Mississippi-based energy sources. So we would just simply ask that we extend this provision out for 3 years. Originally, we were filed for 5 years, but we thought 3 years was sufficiently long, and then if we need to revisit it at that time, we could. So that's what the committee substitute does. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions on the committee substitute. Senator Hill, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
Question.
We yield for a question, Senator
Yes, sir.
Fillingham. Senator Hill is recognized for a question.
Thank you. This would only be fee in lieu for either municipal property taxes or county property taxes. It would not include any for school taxes, correct?
That's my understanding, yes, ma'am.
And what was the total?
You have to invest at least $100 million. That's the threshold, the minimum. You can obviously, the 3 projects currently all are in excess of $100 million. We've got the $260 million in Washington County, $150 million in Tallahatchie investment, and $120 million invested in Perry and Forest counties. I understand there's at least 2 additional projects that are in the planning stages, one in North, one in South Mississippi. So these things are happening. It takes a while, as you can imagine, to acquire the site and the land and all that.
And what was the cap on the fee in lieu?
The cap, I don't see that right here. You. We'll check that real quick.
Okay.
I'm flipping through. Sorry about that.
I'm thinking it may be different depending on, I don't know, my thought was it could be different
Yeah.
based on where it was located, or maybe it's just across the board cap, or maybe there is no cap.
I'm not seeing a cap in here, Senator Hill. I think there's a minimum investment, but I
Okay.
don't see a cap listed.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. No other questions?
Questions one?
I move
Seeing none,
adoption
we're-
of the committee substitute.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, Senator. We're on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. If no other questions, I'll move adoption by use in the morning. Roll call.
Mr. Moore, roll call been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Mr. Records voting no. Present. Present, Hill. Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing none, the bill passes. Senator Harkins, on item 15, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to skip item 15 through 18, have them retain their place on the calendar.
15 through 18 retains its place on the calendar. Next to the motions, Senator Bryan. Okay. Senator Bryan passes. Item 22. Pardon me, which one, Senator? I'm sorry, 21, Senator. Senator Simmons is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I go to item 21 on today's calendar. Ask that the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 2306, Flood and Drainage Control Districts, revised number of directors for certain municipalities.
Mr. President, I move to table.
Move to table. Second. Have a question, Senator Hill?
Yes, motion.
Senator Hill, you're recognized.
Thank y'all so much. This bill kind of flew by me yesterday before I realized what it was. This bill basically is talking about the extension of the One Lake Plan that has been talked about for several years up here, and a tax bill was passed in 2017. This project is still not permitted. There's some people that live downriver from Jackson, and we have serious concerns about this One Lake project. And I have some data. Number one, the Army Corps of Engineers technical review makes it clear that One Lake will not reduce flood risk for local communities. It does not create any additional storage capacity, and that is on their ATR report, June 2020, page 93. One Lake construction will expose local and downstream communities to toxic contamination by disturbing 8 dangerous waste sites. There's no plan to protect public health, with only a paltry $8 million set aside for cleanup. If you remember, MDOT, Mississippi Department of Transportation under Melinda McGrath, confirmed that One Lake would cause the collapse of 9 major bridges. The estimated $110 million cost to replace these bridges is not included in the estimated $345 million construction. That's MDOT letter dated 9/5/2018. One Lake will exacerbate the city of Jackson's water crisis. The J.H. Farrell Water Treatment Plant, which supplies 30% of Jackson's water, and operated during the recent water crisis, could not operate during construction because of dredging-induced water quality problems, forcing Jackson to somehow find a temporary water supply for 3 years and pay for that. Now, my concern about that is we also have a bill to create a utility authority, a regional utility authority. That could put the state of Mississippi being the ones that could wind up having to pay for this additional water treatment facility during the dredging and building of One Lake. I just wanted to bring some of these things to light because all this stuff is not talked about. All you see in the news and the headlines is we got to do something about Jackson's floods. And if I may be wrong, but I believe that I read that Representative Benny Thompson is not for this project. I may be wrong, but I believe I did read that. We have many permits downstream Okay, we have many permits. We have a Georgia Pacific plan in Monticello that's in Senator Barrett's district. We have numerous permits, and any change to the flow, low flow down that Pearl River would put these folks in violation and shut them down and cause those jobs to be lost. So I just want to make you aware. I know I'm not going to stop this bill right here, but I want to make folks aware that there are people downstream. The oyster industry has been devastated by the opening of the Bonnie Carey Spillway. That water quality in the Mississippi Sound is severely impacted by what happens in the Pearl River, okay? There are studies that show that that will further decimate the oyster industry if one lake is built. It will change the water quality of what's going into the Mississippi Sound, and all the money that's been put into rebuilding the oyster industry would basically be just busted. So just wanted to make you aware of that. And I'm not going to vote to table this motion.
Okay. Senator Wiggins, for what purpose, sir?
Question,
Question, Senator, which first, Senator Hill,
Senator Hill.
Senator Hill.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator Hill, for bringing this to our attention. Are you aware of the reports in the Sun Herald and WLOX that talks about how bad the One Lake project will be for the Gulf Coast seafood industry?
Yes, that's what I'm referencing when I'm talking about the oyster industry.
And the Bonnie Carey Spillway, which you mentioned, that's from Louisiana that opened and destroyed it. And the One Lake, from what I understand, the One Lake project is going to exacerbate that and add to what the Bonnie Carey Spillway has done.
Yes, maybe in a different form, but yes, it will adversely affect it 100%.
And are you aware that from Pearl River County south, that all pretty much every interest group, politicians, government entity have all raised very serious concerns about this One Lake project?
I would say that it's farther north than Pearl River County. I know that the mayor of Monticello has made trips to Washington, D.C., and she is adamantly opposed to it because of the Georgia Pacific plant and many other discharge permits from industries along that river.
In this bill, and it slid by me as well, in this bill, is this creating the One Lake project?
No, this bill is basically allowing the levee district to expand into Hinds County and add 2 more board members if the project moves forward.
If so, this is not allowing the One Lake project, but this is
Preparing for it.
Preparing for it.
Yes.
Do we know what the status of the One Lake project is, where it sits, I guess?
It still sits in the hands of the feds. And we do know that there's been movement in D.C. to bypass the normal processes that something of this magnitude would happen. We also know that there's been $224 million appropriated in D.C. before any permits or final
Senator, I'm
approval
sorry,
has
the
ever
5
been
minutes,
made.
your 5 minutes has expired. We are going to call on the
Request additional 5 minutes.
Request additional? No, on this particular motion, I don't believe we do. Just 1 second, please. Okay. I'm sorry, Senator, it's 5 minutes total. So we're ready for the vote.
Would
Senator?
you not extend additional 5 minutes?
No, ma'am, it's not allowed. Thank you very much.
It is allowed, I think. I think I've seen it before.
Speak with Bob. He's right there. Senator Simmons?
Your Honor, I understand, not Your Honor. Mr. President, I understand that the proponents for the motion, we get 5 minutes as well.
No, sir, you waived that when you yielded to her. So it's now time for the vote.
Okay.
You need to make your motion, sir.
Move the table.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Next is item 22. Item 22, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to go to item 22 and call it off the table. I assume, do we need to call it up first and have the title read? Or do we just call it off the table?
Call it off the table. Ms. Clerk, read the title.
Senate Bill number 2420, Public Funds Offender Registry create.
Make the usual motion.
Makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
And if you'll recognize Senator England to explain the bill.
Senator England, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I discussed this bill yesterday. I've had discussions with Senator Sparks and others in the chamber. My motion or my amendment yesterday was opening some other codes and doing some things that were much more complicated. What we've done here, if I can show the amendment on screen, because I will be making that here just momentarily. What we are doing in the bill, we are taking out the way the bill currently reads is conviction includes a disposition of pretrial diversion or non-adjudication under section 99-15-26. We are taking out the language dealing with pretrial diversion. So if you are non-adjudicated, that will still be considered a conviction under this that will lead you on the registry. That is the explanation of the amendment, and I move that we pass that amendment. Okay. I thought that's what he did. Oh, we got a vote on the call off the table. I've got you. Mr. Chairman?
Mr. President, I would make the motion that we do call that bill off the table.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. President. Would move that we adopt the amendment as previously discussed prior to pulling the bill off the table. Happy to take any questions on the amendment.
Adopting the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. President. If there are no questions, I discussed this bill yesterday. We made this minor change to the bill. If there are no questions, I move final passage of this bill as amended by use of the morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Senator Simmons?
I had one question, Mr. President.
Okay. Do you have a question, Senator?
I do, Mr. President, yes.
Senator Simmons, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator England, what, if anything, did we do to section 99-15-26, the non-adjudication statute?
Nothing. That was yesterday's amendment. That was bringing that on the table. This does nothing to that.
So that statute, as it is currently in law, we did not amend that statute at all.
Let me check with counsel. Okay, no, it does not do anything to it at all. The amendment yesterday did. I pulled that amendment. We had a new amendment today. Thank you for your question and clarifying that.
Thank you so much, Senator. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Okay. Any other questions? All right, we're ready for your motion, sir.
Motion is for final adoption by use of the morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? This records voting no. Present? No, Barrett? No, Barrett. Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing none, the bill passes. Thank you, Senator. We're on 23.
I make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. Before we do that, we have to call it up, Senator, I think. Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 2323, Community Hospitals Allow Consolidation and Collaboration Involving Other Hospitals.
Okay, Senator.
I make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator Bryan.
I ask the chair to recognize Senator Fillingham.
Senator Fillingham is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President. So we are going to call up the committee substitute and explain it.
You're recognized to explain the committee substitute, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. So first, let me give you the why do we need this portion of the explanation, and then I'm happy to go into detail about how we accomplish those things. So the Community Hospital Modernization and Collaboration Act of 2023 has really three primary purposes. First is to modernize the community hospital statutes, which have not been really updated in about 30 years, to promote and facilitate the collaboration and consolidation of community hospitals with other health systems throughout our state, and to give our community hospitals more flexibility to survive and to thrive in a changing environment. The community hospital statutes, as I referenced earlier, have not been updated really in over about 3 decades, despite significant and rapid changes in the healthcare industry during that time. These laws are, in fact, long overdue for review and our modernization. The outdated and unnecessary restrictions imposed on our community hospitals make it very difficult for them to operate and puts the locally owned health systems at a distinct disadvantage compared with their non-government peers in the healthcare marketplace. The proposed legislation here clarifies and expands the powers and authority of the Community Hospitals Board of Trustees regarding contracting, financing, and joint ventures. The legislation also makes it easier for community hospitals to collaborate and consolidate with other health systems through expanded powers and protections. In recent years, as many of you know, hospitals and health systems in our state and throughout the country really have consolidated in order to achieve many benefits, including better access to capital, resources, and specialists, economies of scale, reduced operating costs, and clinical standardization, as well as overall improved efficiency. Consolidation and collaboration is really the only hope for rural hospitals, which are closing throughout the country and in Mississippi at an alarming rate. In many areas of our state, they provide the only access to health care, including emergency medicine, maternity services, and even primary care. The potential closure of the Greenwood LaFleur Hospital, one of the largest health systems in the Delta, is a prime example that you've all heard about. Rural hospitals must be able to partner with larger health systems in order to survive, and this bill hopes to facilitate that process. So that's a general overview. And let me tell you some of the specific problems that our rural health centers are facing throughout the state. So in some instances, and this seems counterintuitive, but in some instances, our hospitals, if they're too close together, are prohibited from collaborating, contracting with each other, and even acquiring each other due to the antitrust provisions in state law. So for instance, if you're in a town that has multiple hospitals in a generally close area, I'll use Hattiesburg as an example. We have two big hospitals that are relatively close together. If they wanted to collaborate, if they wanted one to acquire the other, they couldn't do it because our antitrust law says, they're too close together and we want more and not fewer hospitals under the theory that competition brings lower costs and prices. And so under the antitrust laws, if you're too close in proximity, you can't. Similarly, if you're too far apart from each other, you also cannot partner or collaborate. So for instance, if Gulfport Memorial wanted to partner with the Greenwood LaFleur Hospital, they're outside of each other's footprint or certificated area of service, essentially. And so if you're apart too far, you also cannot collaborate or partner with each other or contract. So these are two big problems that sort of straitjacket some of our community hospitals. Another issue is that almost all of their community hospitals are governed by boards of trustees, which have a set term of office. Some of them may be as few as 2 years, most of them about 4 years that you serve on the board, maybe some as long as like 6 years. But in any instance, they're fairly limited in the number of years they serve. And we have Attorney General's opinions that say that one board cannot bind the following or succeeding board in certain actions like borrowing money or making contracts over a longer period of time. And so any of you who deal in financing, you know that most of these deals are for much longer than a 2-year period or even a 4 or 6 year period. If you're going to do a long-term financing deal to reduce overall debt, to refinance at a lower rate, those sorts of things, it could take many more years to pay all that out than just a 2, 4, or 6 year period. So we want to authorize and allow these boards to enter into longer term contracts and not be bound on this theory that one board cannot bind succeeding board to be able to do anything. So those are three of the major issues that this bill attempts to address. So I will try to go section by section and not be too laborious or tedious with this, but I think it is important that you know specifically what the various sections of the committee substitute do. I do know that Senator Wiggins, I believe, has an amendment that we'll get to in a little bit to address an issue for the Singing River Hospital system that he and Senator England and maybe some of the other senators from the coast represent, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. Let me first go section by section. So starting in line 197 through about line 211, this allows the boards of trustees to enter into joint ventures with other public and private healthcare related organizations or with for-profits or nonprofits for the joint operation of all or part of the community hospital. The bill authorizes such hospitals to form, establish, fund, and operate nonprofit corporations which are jointly owned with other public or private hospitals for the purpose of conducting activities within or outside of the community hospital service area. So again, that speaks to the being too far apart, not each other service area. We remove that barrier and allow people like on the coast to partner with people in the Delta or anywhere in the state really to make these joint ventures possible. Starting on line 225, the bill allows such boards to make loans, debt, or equity financing for such joint ventures. It also allows the hospitals to participate in financial integration or clinical integration with a joint venture and joint operating agreements with other public or private health-related organizations. So there's a good example in my area, my district, the smaller hospitals in Covington County and Simpson County, they have an agreement between the two hospitals where they share costs and cut out a lot of expensive administrative types of bureaucracy. So they're two rather small hospitals, and they got together and said, look, we don't really need two separate sets of administration. We could do better with just having one to jointly run both hospitals, and then we can bulk purchase. So it's obviously much better if you can buy twice the number of toilet paper or paper towels or syringes or whatever you might need to buy as a hospital system and bringing that cost down, as opposed to having two separate smaller orders that may cost more per item. So we want to encourage that and allow that. In some instances, if you're not too close or not too far apart, it's like in a little Goldilocks scenario, just the right distance, then it works. But in other parts of the state, because of these barriers in our law, it does not. So just to give that example, there are instances in the state where this works very well and saves money and helps both hospitals survive and economically thrive. Line 237 authorizes the boards of such community hospitals to have an ownership interest under accountable care organizations and to enter into contracts for a longer length of term beyond just the present board's term. Again, I was just mentioning that barrier a little bit ago. Line 244, the bill authorizes the community hospitals to elect members of boards of directors of any nonprofit corporations for which the community hospital is a member. It also allows the board to create and operate subsidiaries or affiliates to assist the community hospital and to create, establish, and support non-affiliated nonprofit corporations. Line 263, this is an important part where we're talking about being too close together and the antitrust laws in play here, the state action level. The bill vests the board with immunity power from state action antitrust laws when entering into these agreements, mergers, consolidations, and direct purchases. Line 292 through 310, the section establishes the legislature's intent. This intent is essentially that given the current environment for community hospitals, the needs of the residents of the state can best be served by the community hospitals having the necessary legal and operational flexibility to take full advantage of opportunities and challenges presented to the evolving healthcare environment and to take whatever actions are needed to enable the community hospital's continuation as a healthcare system. And I know a lot of times that we don't really like or favor putting legislative intent into these sorts of bills. I've been here for a little while, and there have been lots and lots of times in committee where I've witnessed and even voted for striking whole sections of bills dealing with the legislative intent under the theory that the bill speaks for itself. We don't really have to tell anybody what we intended. We just do it and they can figure it out on their own. In this particular bill, we put it in here for a very specific reason. There have been court cases in other states when looking at antitrust lawsuits where the courts look specifically to legislative intent to see, did we lay out specifically why we favor allowing hospitals that are fairly close to each other to combine, because your immediate fault might be this is bad for pricing, it's bad because it lowers competition. But if you put in there that we are aware of that potentiality, but we believe that the overall benefits of allowing at least one to survive and thrive as opposed to both potentially struggling and being shut down, that gives the courts a reason and at least an acknowledgement that, yeah, these guys and gals knew what they were doing and intended to do it the way they did it. And so that's one of the tests the courts look at when determining whether or not in an antitrust lawsuit they will recognize it and uphold it, or they will, in other words, strike it down at the FTC. So there is quite a bit, if you look in the bill, of legislative intent, and that is by design. So that's why I mentioned that to you. Line 317 through 374, further community hospitals in Mississippi are political subdivisions of our state. Accordingly, the legislature again finds there is a compelling interest in establishing a structure and process for a community hospital to adapt to this dynamic environment and to operate more efficiently. If you go over to line, I think 569, this deals with an amendment to raise the compensation of the per diem for community hospital boards of trustees from its current $150 per diem to a $250 per diem. Again, these laws haven't really been updated in about 30 years. So that's the change in those lines. Lines 621 through 624, section is amended to add a definition of healthcare collaboratives to mean any consolidation or collaboration involving the University of Mississippi Medical Center and other public, private, or nonprofit healthcare facilities or providers. Now, I will mention, and if I need to, I can come back to it. Back in 2017, under House Bill 926, the legislature has already given the University of Mississippi Medical Center authority to collaborate and consolidate outside of their immediate footprint. So you might wonder, why is that language in here? The thing that they don't currently have that they would like to have, obviously, is the antitrust protection that comes with this particular bill. So we gave them the authority to reach out and to collaborate and contract with places all over the state. In fact, I know they were actively trying to collaborate or investigate the opportunity up in Greenwood. I think ultimately, for now at least, they've decided it wasn't economically feasible for them to do so. So they're not currently, I think, pursuing that option. But legally, we gave them back in 2017 in House Bill 926 that right. But what they don't have is the antitrust protections that are included in these bills. So that's why you'll see multiple sections referencing or referring to UMMC. It's to restate what we already gave them, but then add in the layer that they don't have, which is the antitrust immunity from state actions. All right, moving along, trying to speed this up for you all. A lot of those sections, again, deal with the restatement of the UMMC language. 822 through 826, the bill establishes it's to be the intent of our legislature that the act be liberally construed. And then 853 to 858, the bill amends the leading antitrust statute to conform to the provisions of the bill. And then line 859, the effective date is immediately upon passage. So that's a fairly quick, hopefully not too tedious breakdown of the various sections of the committee substitute. But I don't know if the president would like to entertain the amendment first that Senator Wiggins has, or if we want to answer questions on the committee sub.
We can do the committee sub first, sir.
Okay. I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions on the committee substitute.
Okay, we'll start with Senator Blackman. Senator Blackman, for what purpose, ma'am?
Question.
Are you for a question, Senator?
Yes, sir.
Senator Blackman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said on lines 822, something about it's to be liberally construed, and I don't see that on
Okay.
822.
Let me look it up, Senator Blackman. And we've had about 13 versions of this over the last 3 weeks, so I do apologize up front if I'm calling out the wrong number, because 817, I'm told, is the updated line on that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Wiggins, for what purpose, sir?
Friendly question.
Are you for a question, sir?
Yes, sir.
Senator Wiggins is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Philligain. You worked hard on it. My question is, and because of those 14, I'm not sure of the line, but
Yes.
I looked at one that had the definition of healthcare collaborative, and it said an academic medical center and any public-private entity. Does that mean the collaborative has to have the academic, or can it be a public-private only? Do you get what I'm saying?
It can be both.
Okay, so the fact that it says and, it doesn't need to say and/or?
No, it's to empower UMMC to partner with either private hospitals in the state or with other governmental hospitals like Gulfport Memorial or,
But
yeah.
But the collaborative doesn't have to include UMMC?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Senator Jordan, for what purpose you seek recognition, sir? Question?
Question, Mr.
You for a question,
Mr.
Senator?
President.
You're recognized, Senator Jordan.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, how many individuals are involved with this bill? Process?
A lot, of course.
Patients, as far as patients concerned, if these hospitals should come together in this order.
How many patients are we talking about?
Specifically, I'm referring to Greenwood because
Yes.
actually we are in a terrible predicament there.
Yes, sir, absolutely. In all honesty and transparency, I've been working on this bill or a version of it for 3 years. This is the third year that I filed a bill like this. 2 years ago, it passed the Senate, I think 52-0. Our friends in the House didn't see fit to bring it up and carry it, and that's fine. That happens. So this is the third year, and it is different this year. We noticed in light of, in particular, the hospital you're talking about, LaFleur Greenwood or Greenwood LaFleur, they're in a real tight spot right now. And some of that, and other hospitals are too. It's not just them. Almost all hospitals are in trouble. But this bill is specifically intended to help them in this way. It would allow other hospitals, like the one in Forest County, Forest General, or the one down on the coast, Gulfport Memorial, which are community hospitals, to partner if they both sides agree to with Greenwood LaFleur. Right now they can't. They can chat and talk about ideas, but they can't really enter into any sort of collaboration officially because Forest General and Gulfport Memorial are not in the service area of the Delta. And so therefore we don't allow these government-owned community hospitals to operate outside of their service area that's established early on when they open up. So they're at a disadvantage because they have fewer people to potentially partner with. So the idea, or another idea, would be if all 4 or 5 of the Delta hospitals would like to go together and consolidate perhaps. Sometimes they can't do that, again, because of that provision we were talking about earlier that says one board can't bind a successor board for more than the 2 or 4 years that their term exists. So there's all sorts of barriers that we're trying to eliminate to allow these hospitals to have as much flexibility as they can in order to survive and thrive. And it may not look the same as it does today, tomorrow. Maybe they're going to be, consolidating together. Maybe they're just going to have collaborative agreements. Maybe Gulfport Memorial and Greenwood LaFleur want to do a deal together and let Gulfport, run the administration or something in Greenwood. Who knows? But right now they can't even explore those possibilities because the law says they cannot.
So this bill does allow that?
Yes.
Now, distance is so important as far as the Delta and specifically Greenwood LaFleur. If you mentioned some hospital on the coast, that distance would be a major problem because we're primarily concerned about those persons getting service within the vicinity of the Delta.
Sure.
So this bill does allow that?
Well, it allows them to collaborate on many levels. Maybe all they want to do is share some oversight, share some administrative costs, maybe bulk purchase together. I'm not saying that a doctor is going to spend a day on the coast and then travel to the Delta and spend a day there. I'm saying maybe they want to share administrative costs. Maybe they want to bulk purchase and lower the cost of some of those supplies. If maybe they want to purchase the Greenwood LaFleur. I don't think the people up there would mind if someone that's well-heeled could come in and upgrade a lot of the facilities and bring in new equipment and hire new doctors and add specialties if they wanted to. Right now, you can't even explore those possibilities.
I think Greenwood LaFleur Hospital wants to survive, and I want it to survive, and I'm trying to find out how it can be done.
This is one way. One way.
How many people can they serve in that vicinity?
They can serve as many patients as want to come to that hospital. There's no limit on who they can serve. I think the question is financially, how can we get them from where they are today to a financially sustainable platform tomorrow and beyond, because we all know that healthcare access is a problem throughout rural Mississippi, not just in the Delta, but it is a problem. And if you don't have quality, accessible, and affordable healthcare, then how can you attract a plant to come to your area? How can you convince young parents to have children and start families in your area? They want to be able to carry their kid to the emergency room and get treatment when they fall out of the tree and break their arm.
But the devastating idea about all of this is the fact we got about $14 billion that we left on the table that belonged to Mississippi, and Mississippi on the bottom of every other thing as far as health care. And our hospitals are drying up in certain areas like the Sahara Desert, and that's what we're trying to find out. We have a right to survive. We are Mississippian as well. Party has nothing to do with the suffering of ordinary people. Will you agree?
Absolutely.
We all need, Republican, Democrat, whatever you are, need service when it comes to health care.
Preach. I'm with you.
So I want to know that does this bill, I don't care who we merge with, so the service maintained in the area.
Exactly. And you know, the private hospitals can already come in. They're not bound by the distance requirements that the governmental community hospitals are. So if you are a private hospital, you know, out of state, you want to come in and partner with Greenwood LaFleur or even buy Greenwood LaFleur and upgrade it, you can already do that. So
does this bill encourage that? That's what we need. I don't know.
Absolutely. I think it offers more options for Greenwood LaFleur to collaborate, to contract with any number of hospitals, be they private, which they already can collaborate with, or be they other governmental hospitals within the state of Mississippi. They cannot collaborate with them currently.
But this bill does allow it.
Yes, yeah, and encourages it.
Encourages by allowing it to take place.
Right. Once you remove a barrier, I find that people start having conversations. They start discussing the possibilities. There's no point in discussing those possibilities right now because by law, many of these hospitals cannot collaborate. So why waste your time and their time to talk about it if it's not even a legal possibility? Once we remove these barriers, then the conversations can begin and the collaboration can occur.
But I keep being redundant, going over the same thing. This bill does, if it passes, it allows what you say the needs are.
Yes, sir. Now, there are no dollars in this bill. I mean, you're not going to have an appropriation attached to this bill. Those are in other bills, and I understand there's some other bills that are coming dealing with monies for hospital and appropriations for hospitals. This bill deals with the flexibility that we want to give our hospitals in state, because it's one thing to badmouth our hospital systems and say y'all are inefficient, you're wasteful, you don't do things you ought to do, you don't adapt, you're not nimble. But a lot of the reason for that is because we don't allow them in our law to be flexible, to be nimble, to be efficient. So we want to provide monies, I think, to some of these hospitals, but we don't want to write a blank check and throw money away when they're not able to take that money and use it wisely. We want them to have all the options on the table that they can explore and collaborate and contract with and even maybe be purchased by if they want.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your effort.
Thank you very much, Senator Jordan. Senator Barrett.
Question, Mr. President.
Were you for a question?
Yes, sir.
Senator Barrett's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand there have been a lot of variations of this, and thank you for your work.
Yes,
I just
sir.
want to make sure we've got this list. This does apply to private nonprofit hospitals, correct?
Yes, sir. And thank you for bringing out, there should be two handouts.
Yes.
If you don't have them both, and the pages can get them to you. The one you're referring to is the 2 or 3 pages. Because for my own education, I'm learning as we go, but there are a lot of hospitals and clinics in the state. They span about 3 pages in very small font here. There are 37 community hospitals, what I've been referring to as non-state government-owned community hospitals, and they're listed on the first page. I counted up, I think, 37 of those. Then you have privates, and you know, privates can be a private for-profit or a private not-for-profit, and on this sheet, I wasn't aware. I wanted to know, what are we talking about? Is a particular hospital in our state a private for-profit or a private not-for-profit? So on the second, beneath the dark line on the first page, starting beneath that with Allegiance Specialty Hospital Greenville, it tells you that it's a private, its location is in Greenville, and it's a private not-for-profit. And that list goes all the way through the second page to the top of the third page. And then finally, there are a couple of government non-state hospitals, non-Medicaid certified hospitals, and those are the South Mississippi State Hospital, the North Mississippi State Hospital, and the East Mississippi State Hospital, as well as the Select Specialty Hospital of Gulfport. And so I just wanted to know, for my own edification and information, what the hospitals we're talking about. And the reason we have had several different iterations of this bill and the committee substitute is because we did want to be as inclusive as possible. I mean, this bill is specifically a community hospital bill, and that's the way it started out. It's its genesis. But as we progressed through the process and heard from a lot of our Senate friends, we've done a lot of work, and we've tried to be as inclusive as it is. In light of that, you have the second handout, which is a letter I was given yesterday from the Mississippi Hospital Association. And I don't want to read it to you word for word, but it's a very strong letter of support from an association that represents most of the hospitals across our state. They are in full support of this, and they cite some of the reasons why. And in all fairness, I found this out, and y'all probably already knew this, but one of the big economic factors that has played into why most hospitals across our state, not just in the Delta, but everywhere, are struggling mightily is because of the whole COVID situation. You had the last 2 years, all of these folks coming in and getting services, and the government just shifting money out to everybody saying, go get tested, go get treatment, and they were doling monies out. And as a result, you had nurses who were wonderful and have done a miraculous job treating people, but their cost of labor shot through the roof. I've got some nurses in my family, whereas they were making maybe $75 an hour, a really healthy rate, I thought. It shot up in some cases to $200 per hour for these nurses. And the same is true multiplied 100 times through all the specialties and subspecialties in our hospitals, be they physical therapists, occupational therapists, the guys and gals mopping the floors and answering the phones. I mean, everybody's cost of labor went through the roof. And now, of course, the monies from the government are slowly going away from COVID. So, I mean, they're dealing with a heightened cost of doing business. And yet this is another really important point that I will make. In most of these instances, the hospitals that we're talking about in this bill, the community hospitals, they are hamstrung by the payor mix. And what do I mean by that? The people paying the bills to the Gulfport Memorials and the Forest Generals and to the UMMCs, and each one's a little different depending on where you are in your patient mix. But on average, our community hospitals, payors, meaning the people paying for the services, over 85% of that is controlled either by the government or by one health insurance company, and you can probably guess which one that is Blue Cross Blue Shield. So 75% is Medicaid, Medicare, and TRICARE, which is the military insurance, government owned. And then that 75%, they tell you what they're going to pay for a hip surgery or a knee replacement. You don't have the ability to negotiate and say, oh, well, I think we should pay a little more than that. You can charge whatever you want, but the government comes in and says, we're going to pay you X. And that's what you're going to get. And you can like it or refuse to do the surgery. The other 25% of that, about 10%, is non-paid or non-compensated care. So people who don't have insurance, they're not on Medicaid, and they don't have the means to pay. So now you're up to 85%. And of the remaining portion, 15%, about 80% of that 15% is one health insurer, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield. So they come in and say, this is what we're going to pay you for that procedure or that operation or that medication. So when you start talking about, well, they should lower their costs or they should charge more to generate more revenue, they can't do that because the government is sitting there telling them, no, this is what we're going to pay you for that. And so there's extremely little private pay, and even those that have health insurance, most of them have 80% approximately that one health insurance, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield. So you can start seeing how you have very little negotiating power, if any at all, and yet your costs have gone through the roof. They're skyrocketing. So that's why, in large part, many of these hospitals across our state, some are in better shape obviously than others, but all of them are facing real shortages of income as it relates to income versus outgo.
Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Norwood, for what purpose you seek recognition, sir?
Of course, Mr. President.
Are you yes, Senator?
Yes, sir.
Senator Norwood is recognized for a question.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Fillingham, for your depth of knowledge. You answered almost all of my questions.
I'm a simple country lawyer, but I will do my best.
But I had one left, and that was the private and the not-for-profit.
Yes, sir.
They will be allowed to merge.
Oh, yes. Well, now, of course, it depends on their location. So under current law, I'm talking about, and even, well, let's talk about current law first. So if you're talking about private to private, they still fall under currently the antitrust issues. So if you're already located, let's say in Jackson, because that's where we are right now. So if you've got two private hospitals located in Jackson and they want to merge together, so we're not talking about government at all. We're just talking about two private healthcare providers and they would like to merge, they still fall under currently the antitrust. So the government can come in, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, can come in and say, wait a minute, we don't like this, we don't want you to merge, and they can bring a lawsuit to prevent that merger. So if they're already located here, that is. Now, if they're from out of state and they want to come in and buy somebody or merge with somebody, that's fine because they're not already here. But if they're already in existence and they're down the street from each other and they want to combine, there's still that immunity issue for state antitrust immunity. So we are trying to address that as much as we can. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. We're talking about state action versus federal action. And as you all know, we cannot control what the federal government does. Their law, of course, supersedes the state laws. However, we have seen in other states, Tennessee, Georgia being a couple of examples, where they have similar language to ours. We have seen cases where the courts have upheld these mergers even within close proximity if you have the requisite wording that I was talking about earlier. So the state comes forward in the statute and says, we know that in some instances could create a problem, but we believe that the overall public health benefit to our citizens supersedes or overrules the need to have multiple different outlets for that. Now, that's one part of the test, and the other part of the test would be government oversight and regulation. But I'm getting way into the weeds, and I'm not an FTC lawyer, so I'm telling you what I've learned. But we do include privates, both profit and not-for-profit, in the bill. And of course, there's not going to be that issue if they're not already side by side. If you're talking about an outside entity coming in and trying to partner or purchase, that's not going to be an antitrust issue anyway. You're only talking about hospitals or clinics that are already within that close same city, in other words.
And if there's debt, involved,
That's all got to be worked out in the contracts for sure. That's why you have way smarter lawyers than me who deal with mergers and acquisitions. But what they tell us right now is there are certain prohibitions that they can't even start looking at those types of things. Like for instance, with the board terms and not doing something in this term that's going to bind someone in the next term. Those types of things on the community hospital. Now I'm talking about. That's a barrier to doing any sort of long-term financing projects or building projects, those sorts of things.
Now have you had many or much requests from hospitals that would be interested in engaging in this type of a merger or consolidation?
Well, there are examples already. I think the Singing River Hospital on the coast, it's no secret, is looking to merge or sell right now as we speak. So, I mean, that's one instance. So there are, I think, there are other out-of-state hospitals that have purchased hospitals in state. And then, of course, the problem we're trying to get to really and drill down to is what Senator Jordan was talking about earlier. We have hospitals not only in the Delta, but all over the state in the rural areas that are struggling mightily financially. And yeah, we can write some checks and try to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole if you want to, and it's not going to last long. But if we change the culture and the way that they can think and work together collaboratively, hopefully with the infusion of monies that can be brought to bear, they can use those dollars more wisely to sustain themselves over a long period of time, not just, a year or two.
And so the ultimate goal is to make healthcare more readily available and accessible to the general public.
Absolutely, and to keep those doors open in all parts of our state. Now, healthcare is changing. You don't need a 300-bed hospital in every community in our state because a lot of procedures are now done outpatient. Where used to be you would stay a week in the hospital. Now you go in the morning, have your surgery, and you're home by nighttime. So healthcare is drastically changing with the improving medical science and the technology. There's a lot of less demand for long-term hospital stays, and that's a good thing. And so we got to recognize that, all things being equal, healthcare is evolving and changing every minute, but we haven't addressed these statutes really seriously in about 30 years. So we're trying to catch up with the times. Again, this is not a perfect bill, and I don't know that any legislation is, but it's certainly an honest attempt to try to unshackle our community hospitals, to try to make them flexible, allow them to be efficient, so that we can stop carping and complaining about how poorly run they are and how what bad financial shape they're in, when it's really us in the legislature who hasn't taken the time over the past 30 years to keep these statutes updated.
Thank you, Senator Fillingane. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Norwood. Senator Williams, for what purpose you seek recognition, sir?
Question, Mr. President.
For you for a question?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed, Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Simple country lawyer, but a very good simple country lawyer. Thank you for your work on this. Just as a lot of moving parts to it, as I kind of reconcile this, there's a couple of things that seem to permeate service. Just want to see if you would agree with them. Number one, profit, nonprofit, government, all players in the space are included in this legislation, so they all get to participate, correct?
Yes, that is true.
And
that was a change. I mean, several iterations of this had one and not the other and both, and then, so we've shifted. If you look at the original bill versus the committee substitute, really thanks to Senator Blackman, I'll have to give her a shout out. She offered an amendment in the committee that really brought to fore the privates into this bill. And I think that was a huge improvement.
yes, sir. So all players are invited, if you will, with the legislation.
Yes.
And if this were to become law, would you agree with the statement that we are basically loosening the handcuffs, if not taking them off of government regulation? This is less bureaucracy. This is less government oversight in this industry.
I'm glad you brought that up. The answer is yes. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you there are other types of bills that have been filed in the past. And quite honestly, we're in the discussions when looking at this bill called a COPA. Many of you have probably heard of COPA legislation, which is Certificate of Public Advantage, very similar to the Certificate of Need, the CON laws that we have. What a COPA does is it lays out a structure whereby there is continuing government oversight, and you have to apply to the COPA entity, which would probably be the Department of Health in this case in other states, and they would have to approve the acquisitions and the collaborations. They would have to monitor them going forward to make sure they're not having any adverse effects. They would have to keep updates and reports. It's very costly, a lot of bureaucracy, and some places have that, to be quite honest. This bill is not a COPA bill. And the reason it's not is because, as you were just articulating, I think this bill is about unburdening and unshackling our county and community-owned hospitals and allowing the privates to interact freely therein. It's not really a COPA bill because we really didn't want that, to be quite honest. Now, a COPA bill would provide some extra maybe protections that maybe some of the hospitals throughout the state would like to have, but then the question is, at what price, at what cost? Did they want to have those extra protections at the cost of having the extra costs and the governmental oversight that it would entail? So you would essentially then have a mini FTC in the state of Mississippi, probably housed at the Department of Health or some new agency, the Federal Trade Commission of such. So you would have to apply to them like you do with a CON. You'd have to explain, what your game plan is, what your cost estimates are, what services you're going to provide, how that's not going to negatively or adversely affect competition in the area, all those sorts of things. And, we honestly looked at that. We've had a lot of discussions. I met with lots of lawyers, lots of hospital attorneys over the past several months and the past several years, to be quite honest. And it's funny, or maybe it's not, because I am an attorney, so I can talk about this, but you talk to each attorney, and each attorney has a slightly different take on what is best and what's worst and what works and what doesn't work. Some attorneys, hospital attorneys, seem to think that Senator Blackman's language is wonderful and does the trick and affords all these protections. Other attorneys look at that and say, well, it gets us part of the way there. We may need to tweak it later on and add some COPA language, that sort of thing. Again, I'm not an FTC lawyer, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know all the vagaries and intricacies of the COPA laws and what that would bring about or not. I can tell you definitively that is not what this is.
Thank you. It just seems like that this is an industry that's been very heavily regulated in the past, maybe for good reason, but here we're at a point that we're backing up and maybe letting the industry work within itself a little bit more.
Trying to, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Williams. Senator Hill, for what purpose do you seek recognition?
Just a question.
For you for a question, Senator. Please proceed, Senator Hill.
I appreciate you improving and working hard on this. And I understand that everybody wants a solution.
Yeah.
My concern would be that as we allow UMC to move and grow, and we've already got a grant program that we're looking at for rural hospitals, it just becomes a concern to me that can you see this maybe evolving into something similar to PERS, how, our employment system's constantly coming, wanting more money from the legislature, wanting to raise the rates of the employer's contribution. Would you see a problem down the line once we get all these tertiary nonprofits and all these tentacles in place that there may be a movement in the future to continue to come to the legislature for bailouts? That's my concern, that, that we may, just basically have one of these revolving things like PERS, that we honestly, would be stuck for forever to try to do bailouts. That's just my concern.
Well, you put your finger on a number of very good points, and ones that we have discussed in the evolution of this bill, one being PERS. There were some thoughts about specifically addressing some of the current problems with PERS and as it relates vis-a-vis the hospitals, and that was not included in here because of that very reason you articulated. We didn't really want to get into the PERS type situation in the middle of a community hospital bill where, frankly, I don't think it really belonged. And I think what we're trying to accomplish with this bill is just the opposite of the problem that you are just, articulating could happen in the future, because I think the more flexibility we give to these community hospitals that the government already owns, i.e., Gulfport Memorial, Forest General, and others across the state. There's about 37 of them listed on our list there. You can go down the list. The more flexible and adaptable we allow them to be, plus given whatever monies that the government, the federal government and the state government will provide to them, I think the better the chances are that they figure out a way to survive. Now, honestly, that's going to be different and look different in different parts of our state. So you may find that some continue on as they are and limping along, and maybe they figure out a way to save themselves, But I think most are going to have to realize that what's happened in the past cannot continue happening on into the future in the current healthcare environment. They're going to have to figure out either a partner, for-profit, not-for-profit, private hospital to partner with. They can consolidate amongst themselves, like in the Delta potentially, if they figure that fewer, larger, more financially strong hospitals would be preferable to 5 or 6 smaller, less economically viable solutions, or they can partner with another stronger community hospital across the state. And you mentioned UMMC, and again, I know a lot of people have different thoughts about our university hospital, but I'll tell you what this bill does is not expanding their role. That was done back in 2017 in House Bill 926. Again, the only thing that this does for UMMC, and the only reason they're even mentioned in this bill, is because back in 2017, when we passed House Bill 926, we did not include the antitrust protections from state action that the other community hospitals would get in this bill. So of course, when they were looking at this bill, they said, hey, y'all are going to be giving all the Forest Generals and the Gulfport Memorials and all these state action protection on anti-immunity. Why not also allow us to have that also? So we said, well, you're right. You're here, you're a state-owned hospital. You deserve to have that just like the other government hospitals do if we're going to go down this road. So that's really the only reason they're even mentioned.
And we just passed a nonprofit transparency bill yesterday. The nonprofits that are mentioned in here that could potentially form, would those be subject to that transparency?
Yes.
Because they would be receiving some form of state funds. So that would
Absolutely.
kind of help us keep track of it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Senator Polk, you're recognized for what purpose, sir?
A question, Mr.
You
President.
for a question,
Yes,
Senator
sir.
Fillingane?
Sure.
Please proceed, Senator Polk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator. In the 12 years I've been here, many times I have found that the only medical hospital that the state of Mississippi owns and is responsible for is UMMC. And many times we pass bills over these 12 years that sometimes give UMC an advantage over our community hospitals.
Sure.
I was looking for your assurance that this bill does not in any way give UMMC any advantage over our community hospitals.
Great point. I 100% agree with your comments prior to your question. And no, just the opposite. UMMC already has the ability to go outside of their footprint. We gave that back to only them, as you just referenced, back in 2017 with Representative White, Jason White's bill, I believe, which was House Bill 926. So what this bill does is bring all the other governmental community hospitals up to the same level where they can also operate outside of their footprint. The only thing that UMMC, the only benefit they get in this bill, which they do not have, is the antitrust protection from state action antitrust laws. And that is also being given to all the others. So they would all get that in this bill at the same time. The only difference is UMC had already gotten the ability to operate outside of their footprint when all the others, Forest Generals and Gulfport Memorials, could not. So it brings us up to where they already are, and then layers on top of that antitrust immunity from state actions on top of that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your work.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator Polk. Seeing no further questions, Senator? Committee side.
Do we adopt it? I move for adoption of the committee substitute before, I think there's some amendments coming.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're ready for amendments. Senator Wiggins, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Lieutenant Governor. This is a simple amendment and just two brief background points. One, for those that don't know how community hospitals are structured, in the case where we are, you have the county that owns it, and then every community hospital is governed by a board of trustees. And so, I'm sorry, I actually mentioned that. And so the board of trustees, what the amendment is doing is requiring sign off by the owners before any of this mergers or sales can go on. And so in our case, and many of you know that Singing River Hospital has gone through a lot of what we've been discussing. And many of you know that they actually have an RFP out pending for sale. And we're concerned that if not for the amendment that's before you, that sale could not go through. But the amendment is drafted not just for Singing River, it's drafted for every community hospital, which means that if your community hospital is owned by a board of supervisors or a county, then they just have to give approval. And in other words, the trustees can't enter into these transactions without working with the board of trustees. I'm sorry, without working with the board of supervisors. And so the amendment is before you. And what it says is that the board of trustees shall not sell, lease, enter, and do all that without the approval of the owners of those assets. And so that you know, in the code that we're inserting this amendment, it lists out what the duties and powers are of the trustees. And so this is simply another duty or power of the trustee. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions on the amendment? Senator Hobson, for what purpose you seek recognition, sir?
Question, Mr. President.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you.
Yes, I do.
Senator Hobson is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Wiggins. If the Board of Trustees of the hospital wants to sell a piece of equipment at the hospital, they can't do it without going to the Board of Supervisors under this proposal?
No. What I was saying is there's a whole list of powers and duties that's already current law. And I would say what you're describing is already in there. I think they can do that. All this is applying to is the sale. If you look at it, it says, enter into an agreement to dispose of assets, facilities, real property, or personal property described in this section. And so it's simply talking about that.
Well, if I'm reading it right, if you're selling a piece of equipment, that's personal property, correct?
Yes.
So you're telling me that the Board of Trustees of the hospital would not have the authority?
That's not the intent of this amendment.
Well, that's what it says.
Well, that's not the intent. What the intent is to be that a sale of that's going forward has to be done with the approval of the owners, which is in our case the supervisors.
Well, that doesn't seem very efficient. That if you need to sell a piece of equipment that's maybe outdated or that you don't need, that you could get some cash or some asset, trade it out for another asset, that you couldn't do that without going to the Board of Supervisors to get that done.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but the owners, as it stands now, in community hospitals, are the community and the supervisors in this case. I don't know how if you're selling an MRI machine, to be honest, I don't know how they do that right now. I don't know if the Board of Supervisors are using my area and Singing River Hospital says, hey, we need to sell this MRI, whether they have to go get the approval under current law from the supervisor. I'm not sure how that works, but I know, this amendment is to not affect that. And,
well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, it's to not affect that. And I would think that the supervisors and the trustees have a working agreement in place, be it on paper or otherwise, or meetings of how that gets handled.
Well, the Board of Trustees are appointed by the Board of Supervisors, correct?
That's right.
So they authorize them and appoint them to run the hospital, correct?
That's correct.
But the real estate, I would agree, is owned by the county in this case, or the municipality, correct?
Correct.
But everything else that would be in that facility, doesn't it seem logical that you would have this appointed Board of Trustees to manage all of that equipment and all the physical property, the personal property that's there on the site?
Yes. That the trustees manage that on behalf of the supervisors.
And you think it's a good idea to take away the authority for the Board of Trustees to manage the hospital in the way that they see fit?
Say that again, ask that again.
Do you think it's a good idea to take away the authority for the Board of Trustees of the hospital to manage the facilities in the way that they see fit?
Well, to your point, Senator Hobson, I think that part of this amendment is coming out of what we saw in the Singing River Hospital situation. And to your point, and I'm not going to rehash that whole thing other than to say it was the trustees who led Singing River Hospital down the road of almost financial ruin. And I know you're familiar with the pension plan and the crisis that they had. And to your point, the trustees, at that point, left to their own devices, led them to almost financial ruin. And so what happened in our case was the supervisors stepped back up and honestly provided their oversight authority that they actually needed to be doing, and it's worked ever since. And so to your question of, is it fair to the trustees, the owners are the owners. And so that's what we're trying to address in this.
Well, why have a board of trustees if the board of supervisors have to approve any dispensing of assets? I think it's just dispensing and not purchasing, but why have a board of trustees if the county board of supervisors is going to essentially run the hospital?
No, the board of supervisors are not running the hospital as I understand. And where this is, as I mentioned, in the case of Singing River, there is an RFP pending. And the concern, and I've taught, in my case, I've taught, as has Senator England, have talked both with the board of trustees, with the CEO, and have talked with our supervisors. And they both agree to this amendment, okay? And we're talking about what could happen with these hospitals.
Can we limit it to Singing River then, and just not for the rest of our hospitals, not limit it to?
You know what, Senator Hobson, I'm happy to limit to
through
Singing River Hospital if that's what you want to do, and if that's, I'm fine with doing that.
I have to be against it the way it's written right now, because I think this is creating a more cumbersome process. It's taking away, look, the boards of trustees of hospitals have some oversight of the hospital. The administrators under the statute are actually the ones that run the hospital to a large degree. So essentially, you're just stripping away almost every authority of the board of trustees to run the hospital the way they see fit under this proposal. And I know you had a problem in Singing River, but does it seem like it's a good idea to go ahead and mess it up for everybody else just because y'all had a problem at Singing River?
Well, I disagree with your, with how your interpretation of how the trustees and it works, because, and I'm no healthcare lawyer in that sense or anything, so I disagree with how that works. But I'm saying that there's a reason why the whole bill is before us, is because these hospitals are in dire straits. And just read the Hospital Association letter. And they're pleading for help. And so if current law was working, we wouldn't have to be doing it. That being said, I completely am fine limiting this to any currently pending sale, which would be Singing River Hospital System. So if that's an amendment to the amendment, I would agree with that. If you would like to offer that amendment, I'll be happy to sign on to it.
Other questions? Senator Butler? For what purpose, sir?
Question, Mr. President.
You for a question, Senator Wiggins?
Yes.
Please proceed, Senator Butler.
Thank you, Senator Wiggins. Thank you, Mr. President. Kind of in line with Senator Hobson. So your goal was just to make sure the supervisors were able to sell the hospital, period. Is that what the amendment does?
No.
It would take the,
To put it another way, the goal is to prevent the trustees from selling or entering into these agreements out from under the owners of the hospitals, which are the supervisors.
Okay.
And so the owners need to have a say.
All right, so the way it is now, they don't. The owners don't have a say.
Well, what has been addressed to us is the way that this language fixes that. There is some, not just from the Singing River Hospital area, but from others have said, we're concerned that if the language, without this amendment, then that could happen, and we're just trying to prevent that from happening. And in our case, there's a pending sale. And so when I say pending sale, there's an RFP out, and there were concerns raised that if this amendment wasn't put in there, that would, and I'm paraphrasing, would torpedo the sale.
Okay, and but normally the board that the supervisors appoint to run the hospital, normally they're the one that make that decision or not.
So I asked that again.
I said normally the board that runs the hospital, the supervisors appoint.
Yes.
So normally do the board that's appointed make that decision, or does the supervisor make the decision?
Well, it's actually from what my understanding is of the law, it's a combination of both. But you're right, and as Senator Hobson said, the Board of Supervisors appoints trustees to, quote, run the hospital. Right. The trustees then generally hire a CEO, okay, and they run the hospital with the owners having that. And there are things that the owners can and can't do that we in current law have set out, and there's things that trustees can and can't do. But in operations, that's generally what it is. Now, what should happen, and I'll tell you what happens in our area. On a monthly basis or quarterly basis, the hospital trustees go before the supervisors and report to them what's going on. Now, as I explained to Senator Hobson, how we got into that situation was the trustees were not doing that, and the oversight wasn't there. And so then, in order to get it sustainable, the supervisors had to come back in and work that, and they've had a really good working relationship. So, and to Senator Hobson's point, it may be a one-off on that, but I don't think so. But again, I'm happy to limit this to just our situation.
Yeah, I think Senator's basically trying to say that, maybe if other hospitals not having that kind of problem, they should be under that same umbrella, if you will.
Well, I will tell you this, Oktibbeha County, they had problems like this. Go ask, I think, I'm not going to speak for Senator Williams, but he can tell you the fights that they had between the trustees and that. The hospitals there's been 6 other hospitals that I know of to go under. And this is my point. If the trustees were left to they have been left to that, and you've had the situation here, Oktibbeha County, the trustees in Oktibbeha County wanted to sell it, okay? The supervisors didn't. And they got into a big situation, and I'll defer to Senator Williams, but my understanding is that hospital is in dire straits because they can't work together. Okay,
Again.
and so it's happened in Oktibbeha County. It's happened along the coast in Jackson County. So from where I sit, I will be surprised if it's not happening somewhere else.
And again, those board members were appointed by the supervisor.
Right, and so then that means they could be removed. And one of
Right,
the things,
that's
let me say, the original law was that they couldn't remove them. It was really difficult to remove them. And actually, I think we had at one point attempted to update the law to 4 calls to be able to remove a trustee, 4 calls. If I'm not mistaken, that's now the law, is that there has to be 4 calls. And then you get into, I guess, contract law and stuff like that.
Thank you, Senator Williams.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Butler. Senator Branning, for what purpose do you seek recognition? Pass. Thank you, Senator. Senator Hill, for what purpose do you seek recognition, ma'am?
Question.
Will you for a question? Senator Wiggins.
I do.
Please proceed, Senator.
Thank you for this amendment that you're offering. I just wanted to reiterate, when it comes to a community-owned hospital, who is responsible for the debt and the financial situation of the hospital? Would that be the trustees or the board of supervisors?
Very good point. That would be the supervisors and thus ultimately the taxpayers.
Exactly.
And if I may expand on my answer to that, in our situation, that's what happened, is the trustees who were left to their devices almost put them in financial ruin. And actually, there are rules and laws requiring bonds to be on record to do that, and they had no bonds there. And the county had to step up and do that. And so, to your question, Senator Hill, it's not the trustees who are on the hook. It is the Board of Supervisors and thus the taxpayers. And why it became such an issue where we were was because the Board of Supervisors had to put up the money, which thus was taxpayer dollars. They were going to have to take out bonds. And yes, there's a whole bunch of things to do it. But at the end of the day, it falls to the taxpayers. And I think that's also what was going on in Oktibbeha County. So when these things go under, it's the taxpayers and my constituents who are left holding the bag.
And that's why I'm concerned about limiting your amendment to just one county. Would you be surprised if I told you a similar situation happened in Pearl River County, in Poplarville, and the taxpayers were on the hook for a lot of debt, and Forest General did wind up buying that hospital, but it was not after a lot of bleeding took place, And it was a terrible situation that the Board of Trustees allowed that hospital to get in and basically even hired somebody that was scamming the hospital with fake nonprofits that they owned.
It would not surprise me, and like I said, I think things are going on. And that's what we're trying to do with this amendment, is to protect our citizens and the taxpayers, because it will come on to them. And that's why it was so hard for us in our area, and I guarantee you it will be hard. Should this happen in Greenwood, it's going to be hard because it's the taxpayers who are left holding the bill.
Are you concerned that if we limit this to just Jackson County, that it still leaves the rest of us holding the bag and the taxpayers holding the bag potentially in all these other community-owned hospitals?
I am concerned about that, but if Senator Hobson wants to do that, then I don't object to him addressing that. But that's why the amendment was written this way, was to look out for all taxpayers, not just Jackson County.
I agree, and limiting it to just one county increases my concern about voting for the whole bill. You understand why I would be concerned?
I do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Senator Jordan, for what purpose you seek recognition?
Have a question, Mr. President, for
Senator Wiggins, will you yield for a question? One moment, Senator Jordan. Senator Wiggins, will you yield for a question from Senator Jordan, please, sir?
Yes.
Please
Thank you,
proceed,
Mr.
Senator
President.
Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In Greenwood, our hospital is owned jointly by the city and the county. Does this amendment refer to the city and the county co-owning the hospital?
Not specifically, but what the amendment says is the owners. And in your situation, the county and the city would be the owners. So the amendment.
They are the owners, yes.
Right. So the amendment would apply to them as owners.
Okay. But the board, the commission that they appoint wouldn't have, the final decision really is made by those two owners, because we had a situation where where they put money into it, and as a result, it's going to fall on the taxpayers to make that correction.
Correct.
So.
Correct. The ultimate decision is, I should say this, as we've been talking, in your case, from what I understand as you're describing it, the commission, quote, run the operations, but the city and the county own it. And in response to Senator Hill, should they go under, then it is the citizens left holding the bag in terms of debt and money. And so the owners are the ones who have to deal. It's just like any business I own. I'm the one responsible for the revenue and the debt.
So the owner's going to pass it on to us, of course, on to the citizens. But, all right, but I just wanted to be sure that where it's co-owned and alternate committee 1 year at a certain number of years, then the city will appoint 3 and then the county will appoint 2 and vice versa.
This amendment doesn't affect any of that.
Doesn't affect it, okay. Thank you. One statement, if the institution, the hospital, for example, has overpaid, where you talked about doing, the other person, Senator Finnegan, talked about during the epidemic years of COVID-19, we may have paid nurses maybe a little too much in order to maintain them, and as a result, our revenue was used up.
This has nothing to do with this amendment.
I know that, but thank you, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Jordan. Senator Hobson, you're recognized for your amendment, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Mr. President, I have an amendment to the amendment. Essentially, what this does is take Senator Wiggins' amendment. It removes every authority that's listed in there, with the exception of the Board of Supervisors or the governing authority to have the right to sell the real property. So the day-to-day operations, selling the personal property and leasing it, whatever you got to do with the personal property, even leasing the real property, would still be left to the Board of the Trustees at the hospital. But if they want to sell the real property, sell the facility, they would have to get the governing authority's right to do that. That's what my amendment does. I'll be happy to yield for questions.
Questions on the amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, sir, we're
Not, I
ready.
move adoption of the amendment.
Adoption of the amendment has been requested. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Senator Wiggins, we're on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, I would move that we adopt the amendment, and I do agree, obviously. Let me say this. I understand what Senator Hobson is saying. I think in the case, our local case, there are multiple facilities, and so I think that with his amendment and with the amendment as it stands now, it preserves the sale that's there, and it gets us down the road. And remember, if we pass this, it's got to go to the House. There's a lot more work that's got to be done. So I would ask that you vote in favor of the amendment as amended.
Motion to adopt the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senator Fillingane, you're ready on the bill, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move adoption by use of the morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Wish to be recorded as voting no. Present. Seeing none, the bill passes. Thank you, Senator Fillingane. Very comprehensive explanation. Senator Blunt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to hold an item on yesterday's calendar on a motion to reconsider.
Please proceed.
Item number 51, Senate Bill 2596.
Please read the title, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Bill 2596, Mississippi Nonprofit Transparency Act, create.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Parker, pass. Senator Chasnoff, pass and retain. Senator Delano, pass and retain. Senator DeBar, pass and retain. Chairman Branning, Senator Branning, pass and retain. Senator Branning passes over through 46, down to 49. Chairman Bryan, we're on 50. Senate.
I'd like to pass item 50 and go to item 51.
If item 50 retains its place on the calendar, Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
Senate Bill number 2797, Mississippi State Asylum Records, provide procedures exempt from confidentiality and privilege requirements.
I make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you. Please proceed.
I move adoption of the committee substitute, and I would ask the chair to recognize Senator Blunt.
Senator Blunt, you're recognized to explain the committee substitute.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this bill deals with the property which was the Mississippi State Asylum from 1855 to 1935. That property is where the University of Mississippi Medical Center is now located. Specifically, it is the northeast corner of the property. So if you drive up Old Canton Road, turn right on Lakeland Drive like you're going to the interstate, get right before you get to St. Dominic's, it will be there on your right. You may remember a few years ago, we passed legislation and funded an effort to have the graves of the patients who died at the asylum during that time to be exhumed. And that is the last remaining space really for the expansion of the medical center. That process has been very thoughtfully handled. It is called the Asylum Hill Project, and there's actually a website, asylumhillproject.org, where you can learn more about it. The graves are being exhumed right now. There's a team that they brought in from all over the country to work on this. The bill that is before you deals with a few issues that to facilitate and extend that work. The first deals with the custody of the records, because the asylum, what is part of what is now the Department of Mental Health, those records are at the Department of Mental Health, not at UMC. But what the bill would do is first permanently transfer those records to the University of Mississippi Medical Center and provide for their curation and storage. So the records would be at UMC where the property is and not at the Department of Mental Health at State Hospital in Rankin County. The second thing the bill will do is the UMC would be required to notify and make best efforts to notify any descendants of the folks who were buried there. Again, that facility was closed almost 100 years ago in 1935, but they need to make every effort to notify the families. It clarifies that the privacy of those records will be controlled by federal law, HIPAA. Specifically, those records are not available to anybody other than family members until that person has been dead for 50 years. That's federal law. Then, if HIPAA has passed and the person's been dead for more than 50 years, those records will be made anonymous, so the medical records would not be associated with the names of any individual patient, and then they can then be used for scientific research at the medical center. Any family member, any descendant rather, can opt out of all of this together and take their records and walk away if they choose to do that after UMC makes an effort to notify them. That's what the bill would do, Mr. President. I'll be happy to yield for any questions.
Questions on the bill? Seeing none, Senator.
Passage by use of the morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. We need to adopt the committee substitute, I think, Senator first.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the committee sub.
Adoption of the committee sub. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Now we're ready.
Now I make the motion on passage by use of the morning roll call.
Use of the morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Court is voting no. Present. Bill passes. Okay. Among the chairman and senators, is there anyone else that wanted to bring up a matter on the calendar today? Rather than me read every chairman. Anyone? Anyone? Okay. No, she's just standing. Senator Chasnaw? Okay. Senator Chasnaw, you're recognized. If y'all will go on the calendar to hers, it's 105. Yeah. 105, Senator. All the previous items retain their place upon the calendar. We'll go to 105, Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call up 105, Senate Bill 2006, and ask the title be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the title.
2006, festival wine permits, remove repealers and reverters on provisions relating to.
I make the usual motion.
Senator makes the usual motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Please proceed, Senator Chasnaw.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Senator McMahon to explain the bill.
Senator McMahon, you're recognized.
One moment. Mr. President, I'd like to explain the committee sub. This is the wine and mead bill that we passed 3 years ago, and we put a repealer in it to be sure that we got it right. It was a very complicated bill. It really involved DOR and ABC and a lot of different retailers, and we got it right. This was really good legislation. It has strengthened our wine and meadery business in the state, and so the bill removes the repealer, then we can move forward. And then we've also got in the committee substitute, we've also are adding a new category. It's my understanding, talking with the package stores across the state, that there's a new category of product, and what that product does, it allows fruit to be submerged in the alcohol or in the products. So, for example, I know on the coast we've got somebody that manufactures spirits. They can put a whole peach or a whole apple or berries in that. Same thing with the mead. If you wanted to put remnants of the blackberries or entire blackberries in it, that's what it would do. So that's what the committee sub does, and I would ask that we adopt the committee sub.
Questions on the committee substitute? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We're ready on the bill, sir.
Okay, I've got an amendment. So this bill deals with permits and permitting with DOR, and this would allow for a new permit to be created. Mississippi, we've got a premium tobacco business that is really beginning to blossom. There's 6 of them across the state right now, and there are others, but there are 6 primary. And what it does is it allows these premium cigar facilities to serve an alcohol beverage. And so they'll purchase this permit. The permit is a $450. It's only allowed in a premium cigar. If you sell cigarettes, it's not allowed. So the intent is to support like the cigar bars. And these businesses are really doing well. As you know, Tupelo, this state, the #1 non-gaming destination in the state of Mississippi is the Elvis Presley birthplace in Tupelo. And so a lot of people come there, and one of the things I like to do is visit the coffee shops, but they also like to visit the largest walk-in humidor in the state of Mississippi. It's really remarkable, something to see. So this would allow for a permit for premium tobacco stores, and I yield for any questions.
Question, Senator Blackman. For what purpose do you seek recognition, ma'am?
Point of order.
Yes, ma'am.
I had turned my computer off because I thought we were about to leave. But as he explained this bill, he says it's related to extending the repealer on festival wine permits. And this is talking about adding on-premises tobacco permits. So it's not germane.
I'm sorry.
One moment, please.
Oh, yes, I can. And I'm going to teach my son the rules to pass the song.
Upon advice of counsel, we rule that it is germane. Senator Hill, for what purpose? Thank you, Senator Blackman. Senator Hill?
Just a question on the way this amendment is worded. It looks like on line 6 where it says, in addition to all other requirements to obtain an alcoholic beverage permit, the permittee must obtain and maintain a tobacco permit issued by the state of Mississippi. That reads to me like in order to have an alcoholic beverage permit, they have to have a tobacco permit. And I don't see where this is just limited to maybe a certain entity, or maybe it is, but it's kind of unclear to me.
It's not limited. It would be any premium tobacco, any place that sells premium tobacco. This has nothing to do with tobacco. What it has to do is it's a permit.
I understand
It's a
that.
permit to allow a premium tobacco store to sell beverages, an alcoholic beverage.
I agree that's what your intent is, but I'm not exactly sure that that's what the amendment does. That would be my question.
Well, DOR and ABC helped me write this, and so they said it will cover it. This came directly from DOR. This is a way to strengthen our tourism industry. You know, where Mississippi is really on the rise about tourism. A lot of people are coming to Mississippi and visiting, and this is just another asset for the tourism industry. And these cigar bars, these premium cigar bars, exist across the state. There's at least one here in Jackson, maybe two, but I know there's a brand new one in Starkville, Oxford, DeSoto County, Lee County, Prentiss County, Alcorn County. There's several across the coast. So this has nothing to do with tobacco. It just creates a new permit for a premium tobacco facility. Now,
Any other questions? Senator Harkins, for what purpose, sir?
Question.
Are you here for a question, Senator?
Absolutely.
Senator Harkins is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, as far as this permit, what does this have to do with how are these entities paying tax on tobacco, or what does it address the tobacco tax and how they'll?
no, sir. This has nothing to do with tobacco tax.
Okay.
This is a $450 permit. I think that's being lost, colleagues. This is a permit that would allow someone that already holds a tobacco permit to serve an alcoholic beverage at their business. That's all it does.
Oh.
It's a permit only for the beverage itself, and it does not require any
combine
food
them.
sales.
To combine both activities.
Correct.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Senator Harkins. Other questions? Senator McCon, for what purpose? I'm sorry, Senator Sparks, for what purpose, sir?
For a question.
Are you here for a question, Senator McMahon?
Yes.
Senator Sparks, you're recognized.
Who would regulate this? The Attorney General's office or the Alcohol Beverage Control?
ABC,
Who would regulate the tobacco part?
that's regulated through the normal permitting through, I believe it's Department of Agriculture regulates that.
Is there any food requirement?
No.
Sales?
No, it doesn't prohibit them selling snacks, but it does not require any food sales. But it's a great question, Senator. They still have to follow any and all local ordinances laid down by the governing bodies in a municipality or a county.
Including no smoking in a bar?
Yes, sir. But if you have a premium cigar bar, then you have the proper permitting from your city to operate.
But that's prior to selling alcohol, and
That's correct.
I'm not opposed to premium cigar bars, and that's actually the purpose for the question, is do you put them at risk for violation of the smoking ordinances? Are all the cities that have a smoking ordinance in a bar going to now say you can't smoke anymore in the cigar bar, and you've defeated the purpose?
That's not the purpose of it. This just allows a vehicle, a permitting process if they want to go through it. And of course, they still have to work with all the local governing bodies.
And I'm not saying that's your purpose. I'm saying the unintended consequence of it is a premium cigar bar who has an exception to the no smoking laws or
Correct.
ordinances locally decides they want to sell liquor, which then puts them under other governing authorities. I just want to know if that had been thought about.
Yes, sir. It had been.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
If there are any other questions, I move for the adoption of the amendment.
Senator Turner Ford. For what purpose, ma'am?
Question.
Are you for a question, Senator?
Yes, yes.
Senator Turner Ford is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm not really prepared for this, but certain businesses, I don't know if it's nightclubs or bars, they're required to serve food if they want to sell liquor.
That's correct.
So is there not a concern that we're carving out an exception for this type of premium cigar bar that is not on equal footing with these other businesses?
Well, it's my understanding these premium cigar facilities are not allowed to sell food because of the the premium cigar because of the residue and stuff in the air anyway. Most of these cigar most of these high-end tobacco facilities, Senator, most of them are BYOB. So they sell the cutters already. They're just not allowed to sell the alcoholic beverage. They can only sell it by the glass. They can't sell a bottle. So we're not creating, a new packaging store, a package store competition or anything of that nature.
But we are going to allow them to sell open drinks,
If
alcoholic beverages.
If you vote for the amendment, yes, ma'am.
But
If
then
this body passes it.
there's a class of a business that cannot sell liquor unless they serve food.
That's correct.
How many of these premium cigar bars exist?
I want to say there's about 12 of them in the state, but this probably will, this permit will probably bring some additional companies to Mississippi to do business.
And in your speaking with DOR, did you discuss eliminating this requirement for that food be sold at these nightclubs and other establishments?
We did. I actually was going to limit the bill to only bourbons. A lot of times, ladies or gentlemen, when they go into these premium cigar, most of the times they just want a bourbon with the cigar. But DOR wanted to go ahead and include all types of alcohol because they felt like this was going to be in demand. This would be back before us next year. There's a lot of pent up demand for this.
And are you aware that there are some businesses that have applied for a liquor license and been denied because they do not serve food?
That's correct. That is correct.
And so my last question is, why would we create this law or pass this law for this particular type of business?
Because many times this is part of when a tourist or people come into your area, they'll seek out these type of facilities and they want to enjoy a conversation over a smoke and maybe a glass of bourbon. And they already serve alcohol. They're just not charging for it. It's BYOB though.
And you don't see that this is discriminatory treatment?
No, ma'am. It creates a permit and then we'll let the governing bodies, we'll let the governing bodies decide what they want to do with this. It's just a permitting process.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Hill. Okay, Senator Hill passes. Any other questions? Okay, we're on the amendment.
I move for passage of the amendment.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Let's try that one more time, please. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. All right,
I move for final passage on the morning roll call.
we have a division. One moment, please. Senators, if you return to your desk, and please be seated. We go first. Okay. If you're in favor of the amendment, please stand. I get 25. What do you get? I get 25. Okay. Okay, thank you. We have 25. Those opposed, please stand. Those opposed, please stand. Bill passes. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, the amendment, the bill. We're on the bill.
Move for passage on the morning roll call.
Use of morning roll call has been requested. Anyone object to the procedure? Have an objection. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Barnett. Barrett. Blackman. Blackwell. Blunt. Boyd. Branning. Bryan. Butler to 36. Butler to 38. Carter. Kaufman. Chazanall. Chisholm. DeBar. Delano. England. Fillingane. Frazier. Harkins. Hickman. Hill. Hobson. Horn. Jackson. Johnson. Jordan. Kirby. McCon. McDaniel. McClendon. McMahon. Michelle. Moran. Norwood. Parker. Parks. Polk. Seymour. Simmons of the 12th. Simmons of the 13th. Sojourner. Sparks. Suber. Tate. Thomas. Thompson. Turner Ford. Whaley. Wiggins. Williams. Younger. Barnett. Blunt. Boyd. Butler to 36. Butler to 38. Carter. Chisholm. DeBar. Kirby. McDaniel. Moran. Parker. Parks. Seymour. Suber. Tate. Thompson. Whaley. Voting yes or yay. Barrett. Blackwell. Blunt. Butler for 36. Butler for 38. Kaufman. Chazanall. Delano. England. Fillingane. Harkins. Hickman. Hobson. Horn. Jackson. Johnson. Jordan. McClendon. McMahon. Michelle. Norwood. Pope. Simmons of the 12th. Simmons of the 13th. Thomas. Whaley. Wiggins. Williams. Younger. Voting no or nay. Blackman. Branning. Bryan. Frazier. Hill. McCon. Sojourner. Sparks. Turner Ford.
Senator Suber, for what purpose you seek recognition, sir?
To the vote.
To the vote.
I want to announce a pair. If Thompson were here, he would vote aye. I vote no.
Pair, aye, and no. Thompson. Mr. Clerk. Senator McCon, for what purpose you seek recognition?
To the vote, Mr. President.
Please proceed.
I'd like to announce a pair. If Senator Carter was here, he would vote aye. I continue to vote nay.
Aye, Carter, nay. Okay. By a vote of 29 yeas and 8 nays, the bill passes. Senator Sojourner, you're recognized.
I'd like to hold the bill we just voted on a motion to reconsider.
Motion to reconsider. Thank you, Senator. Okay, announcements. Any announcements? We will pass and retain all the remaining ones on the calendar today, and thank you all so much for your hard work. We'll go to announcements. Senator Harkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to hold item 4 on today's calendar, Senate Bill 2681, on motion to reconsider.
Item 4, Mr. Clerk. Senator Harkins. Senator Michelle, you're recognized for announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, this notify you that the members of the Mississippi Academy of Family Physicians will be here next Tuesday at the state capitol for Primary Care Day. So please make sure to put it on your calendar, stop by and see your family doctor, and they will be providing health screenings as well.
Thank you. Senator Jordan, you're recognized for announcement.
Mr. President, with united consent, I would like to be added to Senate Bill 2323, item number 23 on the calendar.
Seeing no objection is granted. Senator Hill, you're recognized for announcement, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank the Lieutenant Governor for reminding me and refreshing my memory on the 5-minute time frame on a motion to table.
You're welcome, Senator. Senator Younger.
Yes, when y'all come back Monday, please don't forget your boots for the Dixie National so you can go down there and see your constituents showing. And also bring a big check so we can compete with the House for the junior sales champion. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Branning, you're recognized for announcement, ma'am.
Got 2 announcements, Mr. President.
Please proceed.
First of all the members that have put in a request for Memorial Highway, I need your resolutions in. We have to have these resolutions on file before we can bring these bills up on the floor. There are several that are still outstanding, so please take care of that next week. Also, I now request unanimous consent to be added as a co-author to number 23 on today's calendar, Senate Bill 2323. Thank you.
23, Mr. Clerk. Seeing no objection granted, Senator Hobson, you're recognized for announcement, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. For those special fund agency subcommittee chairs, my hope is that we can get some special funds taken care of early and get those out of the way. So I'm going to ask those senators, they are Albert Butler, Senator Branning, Senator Delano, Senator Jackson, and Senator Turner Ford, if you would start getting with your House counterparts to go over the special fund agencies and also as necessary get with Corbin and if necessary, with the agency heads to get the information you need. We might try to take those up early this year and get them out of the way. So those special fund subcommittee chairs, I'd appreciate your getting to work on that next week so we can get some information towards the latter part of next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hobson. Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing none, Senator Polk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand adjourned until Monday at 4 p.m.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.